Walking along the streets in Plains, you can ask anybody. Carter had the reputation some would say is a value everyone should exhibit. Up next, as we remember President Carter, what some of his friends have to say about him and the legacy he leaves behind.
I have to pinch myself, I think, daily. I never get used to seeing them. I get to see them all the time.
Jill Stuckey says President Jimmy Carter and his wife, First Lady Rosalind Carter, are the kindest people she's ever met. Stuckey says President Carter was an avid church member, a family man, and a hard worker.
I like to talk about their work ethic. They are the most dedicated people to life. They get up early every day. They eat right every single day. They exercise every single day. They know the value of their presence to a project, and they want to help people for as long as they possibly can.
Stuckey says she was even able to participate in a unique experience with the Carters.
I was able to travel with the Carters when he received the Nobel Peace Prize. So I have some memorabilia from there.
Just down the street, restaurant owners Kimberly and Jared Ward say the Carters have also had a huge impact on their business and their lives.
We came over to Plains to open another restaurant, and we met the Carters and everybody in town, and they greeted us very warm welcome.
The Wards say the Carters were the main reason they felt so at home when they moved to Plains.
But they brought us in to introduce us to the town for everybody that came out for the Christmas event. And we were over there, we set up a table and we're giving away free things just to do advertising with. And out of the blue, Miss Jan came over and said, "Hey, y'all come with me." Okay. And next thing we know, we're just standing in line getting ready to meet President Carter.
And Miss Rosalind.
She says the second time she met Jimmy Carter, she knew she was meeting a legend.
They just stroll in and sit down and turn around and start talking to you like there's 20, 30 people. And just like one of us. They're just very, very down to earth people.
President Carter cared deeply for the United States and its people, but he cared most about being a faithful servant to God, one that continued serving until he could no longer do so.
I've never seen anybody like him.
Pastor Tony Loudon leads the Maranatha Baptist Church in Plains, Georgia, the church that Jimmy Carter calls home.
I don't know how nobody in Georgia can't be proud that their native son is this man who puts Christ on display for the world.
We make the decision about whether to serve others or to serve ourselves. We make the decision about whether to tell the truth or lie. Nobody else makes that decision for us.
A man that attracted all races, genders, ethnicities, political orientations, and religions. President Jimmy Carter was known worldwide as a man of faith and a shepherd of all people.
His faith is the rebar in his walk.
And it's not a difficult thing, no matter whom you contact in life, to let them know what Christ means to you.
Carter displayed this devotion of service in 2014. David Newbecker and his family drove nearly 2 days to experience Carter's Sunday school service in 2014, but they never made it inside. 5 years later, the Newbecker family came back, and Carter left a lasting impression.
President Carter actually came in and talked with us for a moment and massaged my son's head to help rid of the migraine.
That we should be looked upon as servant leaders.
Just taken by his honesty and integrity, and a time when it doesn't seem to be very common among politicians, and that's why I make the trek down here to see him and Mrs. Carter.
A serving hand that touched the lives of all that he came in contact with.
He's a person of just true integrity, and that what he tells you is the truth, and that he will definitely leave this earth a much, much better place than he found it.
Newbecker is only one of the millions of hearts that came from all over the world to see the faith that Carter spread from Plains, Georgia to the world.
Well, you just heard from Pastor Tony Loudon of Maranatha Baptist Church. It was President Carter who called Loudon to invite him to pastor his home church. Here's that story.
How do you say no to 39? Or should I say, how do you say no to Jimmy Carter?
Loyalty, honor, peace, and justice. These are just a few descriptions that describe former President Jimmy Carter. But here in Plains, Georgia, is one thing in particular that he will always be remembered for: his faith.
Construction guys put steel in concrete, the rebar in concrete, right? So it can hold the concrete and it can be a little stronger. His faith is the rebar in his walk, without a doubt.
James Loudon, pastor at Maranatha Baptist Church, was one of many that was considered within a nationwide search to become the pastor at the home church of former President Jimmy Carter. Loudon was shocked he was even considered. He received a voicemail from the man he said he admired most.
I just wanted to tell you how much we appreciated you coming yesterday and how we enjoyed your sermon. And as you know already, the church has going to ask you to come and be our interim pastor. And if you like Plains and we like you, we'd like you to come and be with us. We look forward to it. Thank you very much for coming. It's Jimmy Carter. Bye-bye.
So next thing I know, they asked me, we would like to see if you would like to be our interim pastor. We don't have a pastor.
Carter saw the level of faith in Loudon and asked him to lead the flock at the Maranatha Baptist Church. Loudon knew this was a calling, and according to his beliefs, he was chosen by a higher being.
And so right away I sat up on the bed. I'm like, well, surely President Carter can get anybody he wants. You must have a nationwide search. And they said, we do.
Still, Loudon became the first African-American pastor at the church. The very thought of former president and all of the things he had done for the goodness of his belief and people all across the globe strengthens Loudon's faith every day.
You fall down, hit your head, get 14 stitches, and a half an hour later you're on a plane going to Nashville to build 21 homes. Some of us get a toothache or a splinter in our finger. We ain't even going to church.
President Jimmy Carter was a pivotal pillar within his community, his church, across the nation, and across the globe.
Our world, our country is looking for servant leaders who are pure from the heart, who's going to tell the truth and stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves.
Former President Jimmy Carter was a walking example of a true man of faith.
The last time he taught Sunday school, we had 18,000 viewers on Facebook. And people say, I'm watching from Australia. I'm watching from Korea, Canada, Washington. Please, please, please keep this going, because they want to hear the man.
From the well-being of people to the strength of his belief, President Carter knew what his purpose was as a man of faith. So choosing Pastor Loudon, a black man, to lead the flock of saints within Plains, Georgia, was all a part of his purpose, despite the past of what was.
We live in a state that have rich history, but he's showing that we don't have to be bound by our history, and that we don't have to use the history to hold us back. We know where we've been. We should be excited about where we're going.
To understand Mr. Carter is to understand his upbringing. As you know, he was born in Plains. That's where he would develop his core values. Carter's parents, Earl and Lillian Carter, owned a peanut farm, and it was there that young Carter would learn the importance of hard work.
Jimmy Carter was born in Plains, Georgia in 1924. His dad was a small businessman and his mother was a registered nurse. Everything changed for the Carters when they bought a peanut farm just outside Plains in 1928. The Carters began to grow peanuts, cotton, sugarcane, and opened a small store to sell crops. A year later, when the future president was only 5, he had an idea. Taking inspiration from his family business, Jimmy Carter began selling boiled peanuts on the streets of Plains to make money. Carter said he always felt like a visitor to the small Georgia town when he sold his peanuts, but he did start to make a name for himself around the community. A few years later, his family had a massive surplus of cotton. This is where the young Carter had another idea. He bought some cotton from his family's shop and stored it for 3 years until there was a drought that destroyed the cotton crop. He then sold what he saved at a profit. It wasn't all hard work for the Carter family. They were known for their competitive spirit. The Carters had a clay tennis court between the store and their home. Jimmy in his childhood also enjoyed hunting, fishing, and listening to the radio. Even during the Great Depression, his family was doing well. Carter said there was always plenty to eat, and the family had just enough money to support themselves through the 1930s. Finally, in 1938, the family farm received a couple things that many of us take for granted today: electricity and running water. Jimmy Carter would go on to be the first one in his family to graduate high school and the only president ever from the state of Georgia.
It was growing up on that peanut farm in Plains that left a lasting impact on the world of agriculture as we know it.
I don't think any person from the time Oglethorpe landed until now has had the impact on agriculture in Georgia that has Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter's parents owned a peanut farm and warehouse, and by the time he was 10, you could find Jimmy Carter selling peanuts on the streets of Plains, Georgia.
The peanut was his symbol, and the active peanut brigade wore a peanut on their lapels, and you know, it was a great signal of the importance of agriculture to the state of Georgia that brought attention nationwide and worldwide to agriculture in Georgia.
Jimmy Carter never lost his way as a farmer from Plains as he made his way to the White House.
An exceptional public official who was very supportive of agriculture.
During his time as governor of the state of Georgia, there was a national rail strike, a potential cripple to the poultry industry in Georgia.
He suspended the truck weight limits for the state so that feed could be delivered enough. And had he not done that, the poultry industry in Georgia would have been devastated.
And when he made it to Washington,
farmers was struggling, and the country was in a recessionary time. He promoted the passage of the Agricultural Farm Credit Act of 1978.
His reach went beyond the United States.
When he did the trade agreement with Panama for them to take over operation of the canals, that assured the continuation of exports that otherwise would not have been possible without ships going through the Panama Canal.
No matter the controversy he faced.
It has operated perfectly. That was many years ago, and it has continued to operate and has expanded. So, you know, history has proven that he was correct and that he provided the leadership at the right time.
1977, not even a year into his presidency, was a time period known as the farm crisis.
You know, agriculture goes through cycles, and that unfortunately was one of the low points, but I think he did everything possible to help.
That legislation, which he spearheaded and signed into law, kept some farmers in business who would have not survived. His leadership would eventually earn him a place in the Georgia Agricultural Hall of Fame.
He was smart, but he always wanted to learn more and do more. And that, I think that applies not only to what he did in agriculture, but what he's doing in life. He just continues to make things happen in a worthwhile way. It's an honor to know and to have known Jimmy Carter.